How terrifying was it to use the equipment that you used on ECCO in terms of just the cost of the lenses?
Oh yeah.
The ARRI Alexa package. I mean,
yeah. Not terrifying at all. I had used everything before. I had done a real significant camera test in the months before we shot principal photography. A few months before that, I had done a big project in New Zealand where we shot Cook anamorphics and Cook S4s. And before that, I had shot an Audi commercial and we shot Cook anamorphics. They're extremely expensive lenses. All the tools we used were top of the line. You know, we shot Alexa Mini and Cook anamorphics, and we used a Techno crane. We used an 18, a 25, and a 50. Those are very, very expensive. Part of the privilege and benefit of doing commercial work is it can afford you some great toys, and it can afford you the comfort of using, you know, a metaphor would be like the best chef's knife possible. And I had an opportunity to use all of the best equipment far in advance of the film. And so I never thought about it at all.
What advice do you have for a filmmaker that is now sort of graduating to this new level and they're terrified? Maybe they don't want to let people know. They don't totally know what they're doing, but they
terrified of the experience or terrified of the gear? Or
of the gear.
Oh, of the gear? Be well insured, first of all. Like, I hear horror stories from specifically camera houses, both in Seattle and Panavision. I know people at Panavision and camera houses in New Zealand and Australia. I hear horror stories about, you know, a film student or an indie filmmaker coming in and begging and begging and begging to shoot with a lens or a couple lenses or whatnot, and they somehow let them out, or they somehow work out a deal where they're very underinsured. And suddenly you're doing two things wrong. Suddenly you're cutting a professional corner, which you shouldn't cut, because if you're going to be very real at doing this, there are things you have to do right. And one of them is to be very well insured. And if you can't afford it, you either need cheaper gear that can fall under that policy you do have, or you need to wait until you can afford the right policy, because you're doing two things. One, you're putting yourself at risk. You're putting your relationship at risk with the camera house, where they're trusting you and you're accepting that trust, and you actually don't have the ability to fulfill that liability if something goes wrong. And the second thing you're doing is you're fucking yourself and your focus. Because if you need to direct a movie or lens a shot and you're worried about putting it on the camera, you're wasting everyone's time, including your own. I think there's an escalation that happened for me technically. You know, I shot with I think we shot with a Rolly or a Bolex on my first film, and then the second short I did, we shot on an RA16S, and then the next film we shot on a 435 Extreme, and then the next project was a Alexa Classic, etc. And so it kind of goes back to like originally feeling like I don't deserve the right to shoot something yet, right? From my photography apprentice days, where I had to earn the right to shoot a shot of film. I had to earn the right to shoot a shot of film with a Hasselblad. I had to earn the right to shoot a piece of 4x5 film, and which is extremely difficult to work with. I think there's an excitement around the tools and the toys and stuff. And that's super natural. I mean, it's very natural, not supernatural. It's very natural. And that's okay. But if you can't handle it, then you shouldn't use it, because your focus needs to be about making the project a success, not about what lens is on your camera. because nobody cares. Very few people outside of the film industry know the difference between anamorphic and spherical. They don't. They can't tell you the difference. So they certainly couldn't tell you the difference between a Cook anamorphic and a Koa anamorphic. So you have to decide the right tool for the job.
And when someone's researching production insurance policies,
Yeah.
is there like a website? You don't have to tell me like a specific carrier, but where would they go to find various carriers?
I think the best way to do it is you can do it outside in or inside out. So outside in would be you go online and you look up film production insurance and you make a list of companies and you reach out to them and you do research and you do hard work and you ask them lots of questions and you be real honest. You say, I got 25 grand. So I want to shoot a short with 25 grand. Or some people who are insane might say, I want to shoot a feature for 25 grand. And they'll say, what are you renting? First thing, they'll say, what are we covering? And you be honest with them. That's, again, you don't cut corners with insurance. You just be honest with them. You say, I'm going to shoot on an iPhone. Or you say, I'm going to shoot it with a Panavision or whatever. Then that's outside in. You do all the research yourself and then you catalog their pricing, their relationships, right? Probably a more strategic approach is you get some face time with an account executive at like Panavision Hollywood or Panavision Woodlawn or Otto or any of the camera houses in town. And you say, I am producing my first project, which they've all heard a million times. Ask for their time, be real limited. Hey, can I borrow 5 minutes of your time? Just have a couple quick questions. They'll probably be cool with it. And then you say, I'd really like to know where the best producers get production insurance who are independents. Because studios are insured differently. So those people will say, oh, go to this place, or this place, right? They get the policies from all the same places. So for example, in Seattle, where we shot ECCO, there's really only 2 places to get film production insurance that's local. Those are people that insure huge commercials, TV series, and big movies. And then there's another one which does small stuff. We went with the big one and we took our camera list, so our camera and optics list from Kerner Camera. We took our gear list from PGL and we sent them to the insurance company because now they have an exact document, which is what we're insuring. So we're not fucking around. And they say, okay, it's this much. Bang. And then they ask you questions like, are you doing pyrotechnics? Are you doing stunts? Are you doing underwater work? Are you doing anything that has a high vertical, etc.? And that's all producer things that they'll get used to when they make more work. But short answer is I would call a camera house and just say, what are the top 3? And they'll tell you. If they don't tell you, then they're being weird. Or you need to just call somebody who's nice. And then call them and get the hard truth of how much it really costs to make something. So,
what about production insurance for cast and crew, not just equipment?
Sure.
What's that fall under? Liability?
Yeah. So basically, you have an umbrella policy that covers general liability. General liability is anyone who gets hurt or tries to sue you during a film's production or afterward. And then you have rental insurance. They call it inland marine, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have sort of specialty insurance, which is if you're doing big stunts or explosions or guns or anything that involves something where there's a risk to a person's life, or if you're filming at a location that could be dangerous. You're filming at a volcano, you're filming on a train track, And what I would do is just be super honest about everything. Don't lie. Don't steal a location. Don't say, oh yeah, we're gonna film in all these places, but we're not gonna tell them about how we're gonna film in this aqueduct or in this like sewer system or whatever, because someone's gonna fall and end your career. And I got a good education on production insurance for 2 reasons. One, I paid for my own production insurance for my first film, and it was $800. And $800 when you're 22 and have no job is a lot of money. And they told me what it was for. They said it covers the camera, covers the film. You're doing a fight movie. It's only a 3-day shoot, but it's worth it. It totally was. And then doing a ton of ads after that. you start to really respect the comfort and safety of having a policy that protects you and everybody else involved. And then from there, you can have particular agreements depending on a location or depending on what is involved in the filming. You'll work with SAG on that. If it's for actors, you'll work with a union on that if it's for your crew. They may need to sign certain documents that limits the liability of their ability to go on a location, because you say, I want twice as much protection. I want this policy, and I want you to sign a liability waiver that says you're willing to do this. So it's really, it's an interesting job as a producer because you're kind of a lawyer. So, but I would say research the hell out of it. It's not going to be sexy. It's not sexy at all. It's boring. It's like buying insurance for your car. But you will definitely regret it if you don't do it. So we bought a year-long policy because I knew that we were going to shoot and then pick up in the same calendar year. And it saves people a lot of money to do that. But most people aren't that organized. So they should get sort of temporary production insurance, which is for a particular, that's why they make their money. Because if you say, hey, my shoot's going to be 5 days, and you shoot 5 days and you don't get everything, you don't have insurance anymore. So you call them back and you pay again, that's how they make all their money. But if you're insured as a production for a period of time, you can amortize it over multiple shoots. So, but most people need to kind of get down the road pretty far before that is applicable.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because you can save more money, it sounds like, doing it that way than having to
You can just not have to re-up the policy.
Yeah.
And also, like, you have a sense of like, oh, if anything goes wrong and I got to reshoot this in a week or in 3 months, it opens up, as a producer, it opens up your schedule. You're not trying to shoot before your insurance ends, right?